Kiddushin Daf Mem Zayin Omid Aleph and Bet. The difference between an asset and a resource. השואל קרדום מחבירו. If people really considered humans to be the most valuable asset, they wouldn't fire them, even when things are difficult. When things are difficult, you don't get rid of your assets. So the fact that the first thing to be dropped when things get difficult are people, as we've seen in the last several months, means we don't consider them as assets. Why would you get rid of an asset if things are difficult? You protect your assets when things are difficult, which means we don't see them as assets. We see them either as costs or we see them as resources. And the very term human resources is one of the most undermining descriptions of the human capacity, which is indicative of a very old style of management. And the term should be totally banished from business talk today, because in understanding the difference between an asset and a resource, we have the biggest opportunity, one of the biggest opportunities, both in leadership and in education. Are we raising and developing people to be resources or to be assets? What's the difference? A resource is an instrument which, when acted upon by a human, becomes productive. That's what a resource is. It's a dormant resource until you act on it, and when you act on it, it becomes productive. An asset is inherently productive, and that's the difference between an asset and a resource. And how do we treat people? How do we think of ourselves? Do I think of myself as a resource? If somebody tells me what to do and puts me in a position and gives me a job, then I will become productive. Or am I an asset that I'm just naturally productive all the time? Because that's what a human being is. So it actually gives us a lens through which to look at the human capacity. And to understand this and to see this idea develop very beautifully, we have an amazing piece of Ritvo, who records a conversation he had with his Rebbe in the 13th century. So here we go back to, I was going to say we go back to 13th century Spain, but really 13th century Spain walks into our Beis HaMedrash. The Ritvo comes into our 21st century Beis HaMedrash and reports a conversation he had with his Rebbe, the Rao. The Ritvo is amazingly pivotal in the development of the Rishonim. So it's in Spain in the 13th century. He's part of the school of the Ramban. He's a Talmud of the Rashbo and the Rao, who are both Talmidim of the Ramban. The Ramban has access to the school of the Tosfos, but he's also influenced by the Rif, who's come to Spain before that time. The Rif is the North African tradition, which is very minimalistic, takes the essence out of the Gemara, out of the Talmud, and works with that essence without really revealing to us a method of thinking. Whereas the Tosfotists, as we know, really teach us how to extrapolate, how to expand, how to extend, how to make comparisons within the Talmud. And the Ramban brings these together, as well as the Kabbalistic school, which he understood. And the Ritvo, 2 generations later, is the beginning of a more modern method of explaining the views of the early Rishonim. So the Ritvo becomes very powerful in helping us understand the Ramban and the Rashbo and the Baalei Tosfos and the Rif himself. And he becomes the founder really of that school, which then is the Ranan and the Mukhe Yosef, all these later Rishonim who are much more accessible to us in a way of understanding them than some of the earlier Rishonim are. The Gemara has two parts to it. I just want to touch on the first part because we need it in order to understand the second part. That's on Daf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph, where we talk about Hamakadesh B'milveh, a situation where a man says to a woman, I'm not going to give you a ring which might be worth $500. You owe me $500. I lent you $500. I'm forgoing the debt. So I'm giving you $500 that way. But there's no transaction. I'm not actually giving you anything. So under the chuppah, there's no ring. Harei at mekudeshet b'mechilat halva'a sheyesh lach alayich. He just says, I'm forgoing the milveh. Is that a kiddushin or not? Or does she say, where's the ring? That's what the Gemara talks about. And the discussion is around the fact as to whether milveh is lahotza'a nitna or not. Unlike an object that I lend you, if I lend you an object, it's not yours. You have to give me that object back. We talked about it yesterday. I lend you my watch. I want my watch back. I don't want you to say, I'm keeping the watch and I'll pay you what it's worth. No. I lent you the watch. You give me the watch back. That's she'ela. Halva'a, I don't expect the same coins back. If I give you $100 notes, I don't expect those same $100 notes back. I just expect $10,000 back of any note. So there's a difference between a halva and a she'ela. Halva is lahotza'an ditna. The intention is that you'll use the money. That's why I gave it to you. So now the question is, if the intention is that you'll use the money, then it's yours already. Isn't that so? Yes, I have, by taking the $10,000, I have initiated a counter obligation to pay you $10,000 in the future. But this $10,000 is now mine. I can use it to gamble at the casino, I can put it into my business, or I can go and buy some clothes with it, or I can pay for my vacation with it. It's mine. If it's mine, then when under the chuppah he says to her, I'm forgoing it, what is he forgoing? He's forgoing something which is already hers. Yes, it's true, he's forgoing the debt, the fact that she has to repay it, that's something else. But the actual money, the $10,000, that's hers already. She can use it for what she wants. He's not giving her anything new. That's the whole discussion about whether a milveh lohotzah. No, and I'm not getting into it now. A beautiful Rashi, a beautiful Tosfos Rid, the Gemara goes into. But on the next page, Rav Huna gives us a din, which we'll see is not la'alacha, but it doesn't matter. The principles are really important. Hashoel kardom michaviro. If you borrow an axe from me, so it's a tool, an instrument, bikabo kanao, lo bikabo lo kanao. You acquire the rights to it once you start using it. Why is that moment important when you acquire the rights? The question is, can I take it back from you? So I've given you the axe, or in today's terms, maybe it's a computer, maybe it's a mobile phone. I've given you an instrument. You haven't started using it. I could say, you know what, I didn't realize when I gave this to you yesterday that I actually was going to need it. Do you mind giving it back to me? I can do that. But if you've started using it already, I can't do that. Now you're in the middle of the use. Now I'm going to damage your business, your activities, by taking something away from you, which I've given you the rights to. So at what point is it non-reversible? At what point am I, the lender, committed and obligated to stand by my word and leave the loan? If I said, you can have this computer for a month, and the next day I realize I need the computer. If you've started using it, it's too late. You say, I'm already using it, I've put some software on it, it's too late. I can't back out of it. So we need to know from when that moment is. The moment, says Rav Huna, is when he starts using it. And then the Gemara wants to say that this is the same as the dispute between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Meir at the top of the page. And the Gemara says, no, there's a difference between she'ela and milveh. Milveh is a financial loan. She'ela is a loan of an object. If I give you an object, you give it back to me as is, so it never becomes yours. If I give you money, the money becomes yours to use, and you give me back different money, but that money is now yours to use. So there's a difference between she'ela and halva'ah, a loan of money and a loan of an object. The Ritva on the next page of the source sheet, I've brought the full Ritva because it's so beautiful, asks the question on Rav Huna. He says, Rav Huna says, when does it become yours? It becomes yours once you start using it. Asks the Ritva, Va'amai lo kanya shoel b'mashicha kemetanat metaltel in the alma dehavya lizman demekanya b'mashicha. What is a loan? At the end of the day, a loan is, I'm giving you this object for a fixed period of time. A gift is, I'm giving you this computer, it's yours. And we've talked over the last few days about gifts without strings attached. I let go, this is no longer mine, this is now yours. That's a gift. A loan is, this is yours for a week. This is yours for a month. After that, it reverts to me. That's what a loan is. If that's what a loan is, says the Ritva, normally if I give you something for a period of time, Sukkot is coming up, you give somebody your lulav and esrog to use it, it's a matanal manat lahachzir. How does that person koneh, how does that person acquire the lulav and etrog for the few minutes he's going to use it? He acquires it by meshicha or hagbah, by lifting it up, by doing a kinyan on it. Asks the Ritva, why is this different? If I give you my computer, why don't you acquire the rights to it, making it impossible for me to retract from the moment you lift it up, like every other kinyan? What is this new kinyan of it starts when you use it? Where do we have such a kinyan? And when it comes to metaltal, it's a movable property. Where do we have such a kinyan that works from the time you use it? What is that? Furthermore, kivan de lo mikne b'meshicha, amay mikne b'vikuah, shelo matzinu kinyan ze b'shum makom, she'kli nikneh b'tchilat melacha. Where do we find that an instrument is acquired from the time you start using it? This is a whole new concept that Rav Huna is thrown in without any source. Tireitz li Rabbeinu Neiru. My Rebbe answered this question. I asked this question to my Rebbe, who was the Rao, and he answered it in the following way. That in she'ela, when you borrow an object, lo mikni le guf hakli klal ela tashmish shebo, you are not acquiring the object at all. I'm lending you my computer, the computer is mine. It remains mine 100%. You don't even have 0.1% of ownership in it. You only have the right to use it. So what you've got to be koneh, what you've got to do the kinyan on is the right to use it. That's an intangible. Meshicha works on a tangible thing. You lift up a computer, it's yours. You lift up a lulav and esrog, it's yours. But if you're only acquiring the rights to use something, what is the kinyan for the right to use? That's an intangible right. So for that we have this kinyan of begin the use. You begin the use and then it will. Meshicha only works if you are holding and lifting or drawing the object that you are acquiring. But here you are not acquiring the axe. You're not acquiring the computer, so Meshicha won't work. So he then asks the following question. The conversation with his Rebbe goes on and he says, we do find that if I give you a tree, but only for the fruit, in other words, the tree remains mine, you have the right to the fruit for the next 5 years. There's a field, I have a field, and I say you have the produce of the field for the next 5 years. But the field is mine, the trees are mine, it doesn't become yours even for a moment. So there, the kinyanim that work are the kinyanim of karka. You acquire the rights to the fruit by acquiring the land. Not that the land becomes yours. What we say is the land is yours in as much as it produces fruit. So you are getting ownership in the land. You're getting ownership of the land's capacity to produce. Asks the Ritva of his Rebbe, in that case, why is there such a difference? I'm acquiring the rights of the axe to produce. That's what I'm acquiring, but it's some kind of ownership in the axe, the same as by the fruit. No, explains the Ra'or to his Talmud, the Ritva. The one is an asset and one is a resource. The field is an asset. It's naturally productive. So if you own a part of the field, automatically the field is going to produce fruit and you own that fruit. But if you own a part of an axe, the axe is not going to do anything. If you own a part of the hardware in your computer, the computer is not going to do anything. You have to program it, you have to work it, you have to type the keys, you have to do things on it. It's not going to do anything by itself. Even ChatGPT can't do anything by itself. It's not an asset, it's a resource. It's something a human can use to deliver an outcome. An asset, you don't have to do anything. An asset you just put away and it produces by itself. Yes, you can enhance the asset, you can improve the asset, but the asset has the capacity to give of itself. And the whole discussion here is, what is capital? What is money? Is money a resource or is money an asset? Am I lending you money to put into your business and make productive? Or can you use it to buy clothes or pay for your vacation? Am I giving you a resource that you can use in any way you want? Or am I giving you an asset for productivity? That's part of the whole discussion in the sugya of the nature of a halva'ah as compared to the nature of she'elah, of borrowing an object. So once we understand the difference between an asset and a resource, let's look at human beings, at the component of labor. So in the old system of management, we used to talk about people as labor. Is labor a resource or an asset? It's a resource. If I tell it what to do, I employ the labor, and then the labor becomes productive. That's a resource. And if I raise my people, whether it's in a business or in a school or my own children, to think of themselves as resources, they sit there and wait and say, not my job, you didn't tell me to do this. I wait to be told what to do, but that's how we're managing people. Once I start talking about talent and not about labor, now I'm talking about human beings as an asset, not as a resource. You're in my company, I don't have to tell you what to do. You are a human being, you're innovative. You'll look for opportunities, you're entrepreneurial. You'll find opportunities I didn't even think of. I'm not going to manage you. If you want to manage people, you're deciding they are resources and their value is limited, it's capped. If you let people manage themselves because you believe in their capacity to be productive, then there's no cap. Then you're treating them as an asset and not as a resource. And so we need to be very careful in the language we use and in the approach that we take to the way we educate people and the way we manage people. To be very careful to understand human beings are assets, they're not resources. Human beings are not like the axe or the computer that if you act on them, they can become productive. Human beings are like the tree in the field. Ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh. That's what a human being is. And a human being is inherently productive. Just leave them alone to be productive. Create an environment, whether it's for your own children or the students in a classroom or the employees on a team. Create the environment in which they can thrive and let them alone. Let them be productive. Because like trees, they will naturally be productive. Because people, unlike axes or computers, people are not resources. People are assets.